Catalin Dinulescu. I am an associate professor in the College of Business Management Department. And my presentation is course development report, kind of best practices, lessons learned from funded grant that I got to develop a specific topic, namely risk management in supply chain. And the grantor is Spencer Foundation. I don't know how to get rid of
You can exit.
Okay. Spencer Foundation is the one organization that provided the funding, and they are a non-profit organization very much invested into evangelizing scholarship work into colleges and higher education outlets. They work with a lot of community colleges, regular colleges across the country. And it came to be a very timely effort because we were thinking to develop a risk management course anyway for the supply chain program that was newly developed in the College of Business. And this came perfect timing. So I said, since we have to develop it anyway, why don't we apply to get some money for it? And we included some marketing activities along with it, as I'm going to talk about later on. So this is a couple of words about the Spencer Foundation, who provided the funding. As I said, risk management is the topic that they were interested in and worked perfectly with us. That also shown that we are kind of attuned with the trends in the market, since that independent entity also thought about risk management as being a very timely and novel topic in supply chains. So a couple of things about the motivation of this effort is basically related to teaching new trends in supply chain, especially trends that are driven by geopolitical tensions, climate disruptions, cyber threats, interdependencies. It's a complex word. Supply chain is global, and any disruption in one part of the globe may dramatically impact, as we have seen with wars and COVID and things like that. So there is a renewed focus to have risk management as a strategic priority for supply chain. In other words, make it into the planning exercise rather than being an operational afterthought. And traditional way of looking at supply chain was very much cost focused, how we can become most efficient across the entire chain, looking at multidimensional supply chain tiers, etc., etc. But it is not very much thought from a strategic perspective. So in other words, it's very much a reactive effort. If something happens, let's make our company agile or resilient or whatever, right? But very little thought was put into the proactive part, the preventative part. And here is where risk management, I think, complements very, very much the traditional work stream in the supply chain field. You can see that various components have been developed for supply chain, make it agile, make it lean, make it robust, resilient, flexible, efficient versus responsive, adaptive, green versus circular, and digital versus autonomous. So all these are late trends that are happening in the supply chain. The problem is that there is no single textbook that addresses properly all these elements. So the strategic side of supply chain is somewhat ignored. And in my course, I was trying to add as much as these components possible and tie them up with the risk management proactive part, which is basically, instead of preparing your company to act and come back on their feet when something hits, why don't we focus into minimizing, for example, the probability of something bad hitting or the impact, so we don't have to run in the last moment in a reactive mode. So I think this risk management layer, if you want, is complementing perfectly the existing trends in the supply chain, and basically has a problem statement. There is a clear gap between the theory and real world application. It's not only related to the proactive versus reactive approach that I was talking about, but it's also implementing elements of data-driven decision making, collecting data in real time, process it in real time. So making our students not only domain knowledge to know about supply chain, but be able to act as leaders and be able to make decisions based on data and act fast if something happens. There is also the component of business continuity management that is also added as part of the risk management layer that I was working with. And at a very high level, basically tying the students not from the operational side to the strategic side, but also from the theory side to the experiential learning, getting hands-on experience, working on projects, working with data, and identify risks, mitigate risks, applying different strategies to avoid risks before something happens on the supply chain. So from the problem statement, these are the objectives. Design a graduate course that integrates the elements that we talked about, theory and practice, analytical versus managerial skills, domain knowledge versus decision-making knowledge, and then prepare students for as decision makers for real-world disruptions. All right. In terms of building blocks, as I said, there are books up there, but there is no book focusing on the end-to-end view of supply chain. So I ended up choosing 2 books that were up there and then providing a lot of handouts to students to cover the extra parts that I was talking about. So the 2 books that I picked were related to the domain knowledge part of it. One book was really good at describing the process of risk management. There is a established detailed process on how to identify risks, how to qualify them from impact and probability perspective, and then what strategies you have to deflect the risk, to mitigate the risk, to transfer the risk, etc., etc. So that's part of the formalized knowledge, and one book was capturing that very well. And then the second book was providing some of the practical insights of supply chain, talking about various risks, applying them to different industry sectors, etc., etc. And then for the novelty layer and capturing the strategic capabilities as shown on slide 2, I ended up creating lots of handouts as we discussed. So the course captures elements of operations management, strategic management. Oops, sorry, I keep on forgetting this is touchscreen. But notice that I grounded also the content into applicable standards. So there are ISO standards and there are ANSI standards related to supply chain risk management. Then I grounded it into some agile practices from Project Management Institute. So besides the textbooks, as I said, my handouts were very much practitioner focused, working and addressing these standards and also the elements of strategic alignment that we discussed. So this is an element of novelty, I would say. There is not a single book that captures the entire spectrum of standards that are available. Some of them they capture, and typically it's only one chapter of it. So because of it, it got me some book idea to write in this field. As I went through this exercise, I'll qualify more and see if it makes sense. But I was very surprised to see that there is no single book capturing to the extent I wanted. Anyway, so in terms of teaching methods, the regular ones, we have a industry project. I'm trying to find a supplier for simulation. I really like the business strategy course where we use a very well done simulation, engaging students, and I would like to find something for the supply chain risk management course. And then I'm going to talk more about what's involved. Just a high-level view. These are the two books that I talked about. The first one is the domain knowledge. The second one is the industry applications. And as you can see, I structured the syllabus in modules. Besides the foundational modules, the domain and the process, you can see on the later sides, we talk about risk management and mitigation strategies. These are the strategic component of risk management. And in the last module, contemporary topics, and over here is where we talk about all these capabilities. Notice that most of them, besides the textbooks, there are handouts that I had to make. So I was thinking maybe I can stitch these, develop a little bit more, and author a book. We'll see how that goes. And notice that in terms of emerging topics and future trends, ESG components, decision-making under stress, all of these components, I think, are very, very timely for students to prepare them as decision makers, really, and not only as somebody that knows about what to do, but they are lost when they have to deal with stress, real-time scenarios, making decisions based on real data, which is complex, comes in volumes, and also making decisions about business continuity under stress, emergency recovery. These are all good topics for our students to be exposed to. This is the project, which is a real life project, basically. They are a risk advisor consulting the executive leadership, and they pick a company, whether they work for or one that has enough publicly available information to kind of infer the typical risks that they may be exposed on. And there are layers on how to go step by step over it, depending on the industry, the sector they are in, looking at global trends, individual trends, internal trends, things like that. But the idea is that they have to identify the risks, decide, prioritize the risks, determine which ones to mitigate, which ones to monitor, which ones to address face on, if that is the case. And in that moment, when you have to address a risk that is firming up and you have to address face on, all these others, lean, agile, being flexible, making sure that you respond quickly, are coming into play. Now, for this course, I use some generative AI that I wanted to share and report on. Part of it is from my knowledge that I learned by taking the courses from CE on AI, and I found very useful couple of things that I wanted to talk about, namely alignment of course materials with the course materials with the objectives, and creation of course materials, basically. Then creation of a risk management tutor for the students that is very much tied to the risk management topics, is fed with particular documents from the class, especially the handouts, which I think are very valuable. And also I'm going to talk about how I generated some nice multimedia that I'm really happy with. And I think they are very valuable to the students. And obviously generating things like grading rubrics, etc., that we are familiar with. So first of all, the course objectives and alignment, right? Using the standard prompt engineering, using the Bloom's taxonomy model. For those of you that already took the course, that's a very good open eye kind of experience. At least it was for me. So I applied that. I got really nice course objectives aligned with the syllabus, with the schedule, with the topics that we discussed. And then here is a view of the tutor that I created in ChatGPT, and I linked it in Canvas. This tutor is configured. Basically, I uploaded all the courses material, textbooks, chapters, handouts that I provided, etc. So this is a very tailored support for our students and can be easily created and generated and linked to Canvas. And I don't know if you have used the Google Notebook LM, but I found them very useful. So basically what happens is you can create podcasts like discussion between two parties based on your topics. For each week, you have the topics, the readings, and then students are listening to two people discussing the topics for the week, which I think is very, very valuable. Because instead of them trying to come up with ideas and things, and maybe not being that astute to unveil some very subtle elements and associations, they hear two people talking about it, and these people are covering exceptionally well all subtleties, all things that may be uncovered during the process. So this audio podcast, it's basically an audio file. So instead of me reciting and lecturing, I think this greatly complement that part, which is the traditional, I guess, lecturing part, and can be basically, you see the materials loaded in the left side here for sources, and then you can create prompts describing how many minutes you'd like the discussion to be, eventually some kind of titles that you want them to position about any particular things that you want to emphasize. So there is some customization level to it. But even if you don't customize it, I think they do a decent job, very good job onto that. And then another thing I wanted to mention is that you can create also video overviews. So there is the audio podcast I was talking about. There is video. There is more to it that you can do, like flashcards and things like that. But for this one, I think the audio podcasts and the video briefings are very good. And the video is the same thing. There is somebody lecturing based on the materials professionally, saving me time. I can do perhaps something equally valid in quality, but it's going to take me way more time to put myself up there, create scripts, etc. This, in a touch of a button, you get it done, and it's not very in-depth, but it's good enough because you don't want to lecture for an hour and a half with students, right? These are very nice bit-sized pieces, like 10, 15 minutes, 7 minutes, depending on how large the chapter topic is. And I think these are very much digestible by students and get them their attention span. So that was pretty much it. So what I wanted to highlight again, I wanted to highlight the coverage of the proactive side of it, enhancing the domain knowledge with decision-making concepts, applying elements of strategy, and making sure that we prepare the students to identify risks ahead of time and try to mitigate some of them, prevent some bad things to happen to the company. And then if something bad happens like COVID or wars, etc., shortages, they have also the domain knowledge on how to deal with. Contemporary topics is also something that I think it was a very good value add in terms of looking at industry trends, etc. So in terms of contributions, to summarize, is basically, I feel that we bridge a critical gap, at least for our students. But as I said, it seems to be recognized also by the industry as being some domain, some component that is very prominent in some industries, like, for example, insurance, right? Banks, they are very well versed into risk management practices as applied to their business, but nothing much in the supply chain. So I think it's a nice transfer into this area of management. And then integration of relatively disconnected disciplines, the data, the strategic management, etc. So we expand from operations management, which is traditionally the purviews of supply chain, and we add risk management components, data analytics components, and strategic management components. And then would like to prepare students to be able to quantify and address risk and get trained by working on simulations. And that's another thing. The simulation component, I don't know what is your experience, but there are very few providers out there that I find that are of good quality if you want any simulation in your course. Strategic management is perhaps one of the lucky fields that they got some provider having it. I work with them. They don't have nothing for supply chain. And everybody else that I looked and discussed with, they have something very rudimentary. So I'm thinking also maybe to create a simulation for the industry. So you never know. This seems to be a very simple effort. It's a course development in a nutshell. But to me, it generated so much insight and so much venues to expand beyond just the course itself. And then some elements of pedagogical innovation, the AI, as I talked to you about, components. I think it was a great application to try my hand at applying some concepts I learned from CE. So kudos for the CE folks putting this together for us. And then alignment with industry needs. I was trying to align with industry standards, with industry cases, industry strategies that can be applied by industry, by sector, etc. And overall, I think they were pretty pleased with the final effort. I have a couple of elements tied to the grant. Besides the course development, I need to present to some conferences, which I will do. And I need to have maybe a guest lecture and some kind of marketing to our students. I'm going to grab our students. I'm going to announce it perhaps early in the fall semester and invite a couple of guest speakers to talk about it. And also on the last part, market a little bit our program. And that's all funded by them as well. So I think it worked very well for us. And hopefully we're going to have success moving forward with the program. That's pretty much what I had. I open it up for questions if you have any. Yes, yes.
Okay, so what were you using to create the podcast?
The Google Notebook LM. Yeah. Let me see if I can get really quick. So this one.
Okay.
And once you get inside, it's like just any AI. You create an account and you end up having some interface like this, where basically something like this. You create notebooks. So this is a particular chapter. Industry sector risks is a particular chapter a week, but you can line up several. There is another screen prior to this where you have the kind of like a folders directory with weekly topics. And then once you get into the weekly topics, you have a chat, so you can interact as in ChatGPT in this side. But this side is important because over here you say, these are the sources that I want you to create the video and the podcast from. And what you put in here, once you click audio, podcast, or video, they're going to look at specifically at those and extract information and create based on those.
Once it's created, can you edit the podcast?
No, you cannot edit. But there is some way to customize it. They allow you some level of customization,
Okay.
just not a full level. And that's something that people are complaining about. You cannot go change something, but you can say, okay, put this title. So on the video, have this on the first, put this title for the video description. And then you can customize. Once you click in this button, there is a way to customize, for example, some kind of slides, templates that they use for the video, whether more classical, whether with more images, more professional or more academic. They have several templates they apply. And you can customize, say, I want a video of not more than 10 minutes or something. Yeah. So there is a level of customization, but not much. However, you can replicate these using some other packages. Some of you may feature yourself kind of with an avatar or with a picture of you. writing scripts and then making videos based on your scripts. That effort is tedious because you have to extract from slides or from course materials. That's one AI, or step number one. Then you have to create scripts, video scripts. They want a certain format to be able to create videos. So it's a lot of manual bullet pointing and putting in the right format. And then go to a third AI maybe to take the script and generate it. So you can get similar results fully. You have full control over it, but it's more effort.
Yeah.
So if you want something good enough and quick, this is it.
Yeah.
Yes, Pam.
What kind of feedback you've had from students about using the podcast and videos from there?
So we haven't teach the new version of the course yet.
Okay.
The first round that we're going to teach is going to be in fall. So I'm going to capture the feedback then. And once I'm going to do the students gathering with the guest speakers, I'll probably have a survey to get their thoughts about what they would like to see, what else perhaps. It's very high level before seeing it, but I'm going to kind of high level talk to them about it, just like I talked to you. I'm going to get some preliminary high level feedback, and then when we start doing the course, we're going to get clear feedback from it. But the grantor seemed to be pretty happy with the outcome. So, all right, anything else?